The small ship fell through the orange clouds like a stone dropping into dirty water. Inside, Yuna sat in her pilot seat and watched the screens flash red warnings. The computer voice kept saying words like danger and toxic and death probability high. Yuna reached over and turned off the sound. She had heard enough. Planet KX-47 was not a nice place. The Galactic Council had given it a special name. They called it a Class 7 Deathworld. This meant that nothing should live there. The air was poison. The rain was acid. The plants ate meat. The animals were worse than the plants. Every species in the known galaxy had looked at this planet and said the same thing. No, thank you. But humans were different. Humans always were. Yuna was 32 years old. She had brown eyes, short black hair, and a small scar on her chin from a childhood accident. She was not very tall, not very strong, and not very special in any way that aliens would understand. She was just a human. And humans had a strange habit of going to places where they should not go. The ship shook hard as it entered the lower atmosphere. Yuna held onto her seat and watched the ground get closer through her small window. The land below was dark, red, and brown. Mountains stood like broken teeth against the orange sky. Rivers of something that was probably not water cut through the valleys. It looked like a painting of a nightmare. Beautiful, Yuna said to herself. She meant it. The landing was rough. The ship hit the ground and bounced twice before stopping. Yuna sat still for a moment and checked her body. Nothing was broken. This was a good start. She stood up and walked to the back of the ship where her supplies waited. The Galactic Council had given her enough food for 6 months. Water purification tablets, a standard shelter kit, and one small laser tool that could cut or weld. They had also given her a communication device to call for help. Yuna looked at this device and laughed softly. Help was very far away. If something went wrong, she would be dead long before anyone could reach her. This was the test. The Council wanted to know if humans could really survive on Deathworlds. Other species had tried and failed. The Valari had sent a team of 50 trained soldiers to a Class 5 world. None came back. The Korthan had tried with robots and advanced technology. The planet broke everything they sent. But humans kept saying they were different. Humans kept saying they could live anywhere. So the Council said, "Prove it." Yuna put on her breathing mask and opened the door. The air outside was thick and smelled like rotten eggs mixed with metal. Even through her mask, she could taste it on her tongue. The ground under her feet was hard and cracked. Small red plants grew in the cracks. They turned toward her when she moved, following her like eyes. "Hello, little ones," Yuna said to the plants. "I hope you are not hungry." The plants did not answer. This was probably good. She walked around her ship and looked at the damage. One of the landing legs was bent. There was a crack in the side panel. Nothing too bad. But the ship would not fly again without repairs. Yuna added this to her mental list of problems. The sky above her was orange and purple. 2 suns hung in the sky, one large and red, one small and white. The Council files said this planet had very short days, only about 14 hours of light before the darkness came. Yuna did not want to be outside when darkness came. The files said that was when the big predators hunted. She needed shelter. She needed it fast. Yuna looked around and saw a rocky hill about 200 meters away. At the bottom of the hill, there was a dark opening. A cave. Caves were good. Caves meant protection from the acid rain that would start falling when the temperature dropped. Caves meant walls between her and whatever was hunting in the dark. Caves also meant things might already be living inside. Yuna grabbed her laser tool and a small bag of supplies. She started walking toward the hill. The ground crunched under her boots. The red plants turned to watch her go. In the distance, something made a sound like a scream mixed with a laugh. Yuna did not look toward the sound. Looking at predators was often a mistake. The cave opening was larger than it looked from far away. It was about 3 meters tall and 2 meters wide. The inside was dark, but Yuna could see it went back quite far. She turned on the light on her mask and stepped inside carefully. The walls were wet with something that glowed faintly green. This was probably not a good sign, but at least she could see. The floor was covered with small bones. Some of the bones were very old, some were not. "Well," Yuna said, "something lives here, or lived here." She walked deeper into the cave, checking corners and shadows. Her heart beat fast, but her hands stayed steady. This was what training was for. This was what being human was about. Fear was normal. Fear was healthy. But fear did not have to control you. At the back of the cave, she found what she was looking for. Nothing. The cave was empty. Whatever had lived here before was gone now. Maybe it died. Maybe it moved. Yuna did not care which. She only cared that she was alone. She dropped her bag and sat down on the stone floor. Her legs were tired. Her back hurt. The air in her mask was getting warm and uncomfortable. But she was alive. She had made it through the first hour on a Deathworld. This was more than many others could say. Yuna pulled out her communication device and pressed the record button. "This is Yuna. Human colonization test subject 1. I have landed on planet KX-47. The ship is damaged, but I am fine. I have found shelter in a cave approximately 200 meters from the landing site. The environment is hostile but survivable with proper equipment. I will begin setting up base camp tomorrow when the light returns." She paused for a moment, then added, "Also, this place could really use some coffee." Yuna out. She ended the recording and sent it toward the nearest relay station. The message would take 3 days to reach anyone who cared. By then, she might be dead. Or she might be complaining about something else. With humans, you never knew. The temperature outside was dropping fast. Yuna could hear the first drops of acid rain hitting the rocks near the cave entrance. The drops made a hissing sound as they touched the ground. She was glad to be inside. She ate a small meal from her supplies. The food was boring, but it filled her stomach. She drank water from her bottle and tried not to think about how little she had left. Tomorrow she would need to find a water source. Tomorrow she would need to explore. Tomorrow she would need to survive another day. But for now, she was tired. She lay down on the hard stone floor and closed her eyes. The sounds of the alien planet filled her ears. Strange cries and howls and screams. Things moving in the darkness. Things hunting and being hunted. Yuna smiled softly. "Good night, Deathworld," she whispered. "Try not to kill me while I sleep." She did not expect the planet to listen. But she fell asleep anyway. Humans were good at that too. They could sleep anywhere, even in the mouth of danger. It was one of their many strange talents. Outside, the acid rain fell harder. The predators called to each other across the dark landscape. The 2 suns had set, and the sky was black, except for the light of 3 small moons. It was beautiful in a terrible way, and somewhere in a cave, one small human slept peacefully. She had no army. She had no advanced technology. She had only herself, and her stubborn will to live. The Galactic Council watched through their satellites and could not understand. How could one creature be so calm in the face of such danger? How could one human sleep so easily on a world that wanted to kill her? They did not understand humans yet. But they would learn. Oh yes, they would learn. 3 weeks had passed since Yuna landed on planet KX-47. In that time, she had almost died 14 times. She kept count because it made her laugh. 14 near-death experiences in 21 days. That was almost one every day and a half. For a Deathworld, she thought, this was actually pretty good. The first week was the hardest. She learned quickly that the water in the rivers was not water at all. It was a liquid that looked like water but burned skin on contact. She found this out when she tried to wash her hands. The scars were still healing, but humans were clever. Yuna noticed that steam rose from cracks in the ground near the volcanic areas to the east. She followed the steam and found hot springs that bubbled up from deep underground. This water was different. It was hot, and it smelled strange. But it did not burn. After boiling it twice and filtering it through layers of cloth, she could drink it. It tasted like metal and eggs, but it was safe. Water problem solved. Food was harder. Her supplies were running low and she needed to find things she could eat. The red plants were not an option. She had watched small animals eat them and then fall over dead. The plants were poison. But where there were animals, there was meat. Yuna built her first trap on day 8. It was simple, a hole in the ground covered with thin branches and leaves. She put some of her food supplies in the middle as bait and waited. The next morning, she found a creature about the size of a dog sitting at the bottom of the hole. It had 6 legs, gray skin, and big black eyes. It looked up at her and made a soft crying sound. Yuna looked at the creature. The creature looked at Yuna. "You are supposed to be food," she said. The creature tilted its head and made the crying sound again. Yuna sighed. She knew she should kill it. She knew she needed to eat. But the creature had those big eyes and that sad face, and something in her heart said no. "Fine," she said. "You can live. But you owe me." She helped the creature out of the hole. It sniffed her hand and then licked her fingers. Its tongue was blue and rough like sandpaper. When she started walking back to her cave, the creature followed her. It walked beside her like a dog that had known her for years. She named him Do-hyun, after a boy she had liked in school many years ago. The real Do-hyun had not been very smart either, but he had been loyal. This seemed fitting. Do-hyun turned out to be very useful. He could smell danger before it arrived. When predators came close, his ears would flatten and he would growl low in his throat. This warning saved Yuna's life many times. He also knew which plants were safe and which were poison. He would eat the safe ones and avoid the dangerous ones. Yuna watched and learned. By the end of the second week, she had found 3 types of plants she could eat without dying. One was a purple fungus that grew on rocks. It tasted like old bread, but it filled her stomach. Another was a small fruit that grew on vines near the hot springs. It was sour and made her mouth feel strange, but it gave her energy. The third was the meat of small insects that lived under stones. She tried not to think about what she was eating. She just chewed and swallowed. Her shelter also improved. The cave was good, but it was cold at night, and water dripped from the ceiling. Yuna decided to build something better. She explored the area around her landing site and found something wonderful. Bones. The planet had large predators that died sometimes. When they died, they left behind skeletons. The bones were huge and strong, much stronger than any wood or metal she had brought with her. Yuna dragged the bones back to her cave, one by one. It took her 5 days to collect enough. She built a frame inside the cave using the largest bones. Then she covered the frame with the skin she had taken from dead animals she found. The result was a small room inside the cave, protected from the cold and the dripping water. She made a bed from soft moss and a door from woven plant material. It was not beautiful, but it was home. The Galactic Council watched all of this through their satellites. They could not believe what they were seeing. Their scientists held meetings every day to discuss the humans' progress. This should not be possible, they kept saying. No species should survive this long on a Class 7 world. But Yuna did not know about their meetings. She did not know that billions of aliens were watching her struggle and survive. She only knew that each day was a fight and each night was a victory. On day 15, she faced her biggest challenge yet. A storm came from the east. It was not like storms on Earth. This storm brought wind that could tear skin from bone and rain that could melt metal. The sky turned black in the middle of the day, and the sound was like 1,000 screaming voices. Yuna grabbed Do-hyun and ran deep into her cave. She pulled heavy rocks across the entrance and wrapped herself in every piece of clothing she had. Do-hyun pressed against her body, shaking with fear. She held him and whispered soft words even though she was scared too. The storm lasted for 6 hours. 6 hours of screaming wind and burning rain. 6 hours of wondering if the cave would collapse or if the acid would find a way inside. 6 hours of holding a strange alien animal and telling him that everything would be okay. When the storm finally passed, Yuna crawled out to see the damage. Her ship was gone. The storm had picked it up and thrown it somewhere far away. All her extra supplies, her backup equipment, Her emergency beacon? Gone. All of it gone. She stood in the red mud and looked at the empty space where her ship had been. Do-hyun stood beside her and made his sad crying sound. Well, Yuna said slowly, that is not good. She expected to feel panic. She expected to feel despair. But instead, she felt something else. She felt anger. She felt determination. This planet had tried to kill her every day for 2 weeks, and she was still standing. It had taken her ship and her supplies, but it had not taken her life. It had not broken her spirit. Is that all you have? She shouted at the sky. Her voice echoed across the empty landscape. Is that the best you can do? I am still here. I am still alive. And I am not going anywhere. Do-hyun barked in agreement. Or maybe he was just confused. It was hard to tell with alien animals. From that day on, Yuna changed her approach. She stopped thinking about survival and started thinking about living. She would not just exist on this planet. She would make it her home. She would take everything it threw at her and turn it into something useful. She found new sources of food. She built better tools. She explored further from her cave and mapped the area in her mind. She learned the patterns of the predators and avoided them. She learned the safe paths and the dangerous ones. She learned which caves had fresh water and which had nests of deadly creatures. By the end of the 3rd week, Yuna had done something no one thought possible. She had not just survived on a Deathworld. She had adapted to it. She had made it her own. The council scientist named Byung-ho watched her progress with growing amazement. He was a tall, thin alien with silver skin and 3 eyes. He had studied many species, but he had never seen anything like this human. She is not just surviving, he said to his colleagues. She is thriving. Look at her. She is smiling. She is laughing. She talks to that animal like it is her friend. She yells at the sky like it can hear her. This human is not afraid of death. She is dancing with it. The other scientists did not understand. How could anyone dance with death? How could anyone find joy on a world designed to kill? They did not know that this was the human way. They did not know that humans had evolved on a planet that was also dangerous, also hostile, also full of things that wanted to kill them. Earth was not as deadly as KX-47, but it was close. Humans had learned long ago that fear was a tool, not a master. They had learned that laughter was a weapon against despair. Yuna knew all of this in her bones, even if she could not explain it in words. She knew that giving up was the only true death. As long as she kept fighting, kept laughing, kept living, she was winning. And so she lived. Day by day, hour by hour. One human on a world that hated life. One small figure against an entire planet. She had no idea that soon she would start complaining. She had no idea that her complaints would change everything. But that was a story for another day. For now, she was content. She had shelter. She had food. She had water. She had Do-hyun. She was home. Commander Taeho was having a normal day at the Human Space Command Station when the message arrived. He was drinking his 3rd cup of coffee and reading reports about supply routes when his communication officer called him over. Sir, we have a transmission from KX-47. From the colonization test subject. Taeho put down his coffee and walked to the screen. He had been following Yuna's mission with great interest. Everyone had. She was the first human to attempt solo colonization of a Class 7 Deathworld. Most people expected her to die in the first few days. But here it was, week 5, and she was still alive. Play it, Taeho said. The screen flickered and Yuna's face appeared. She looked tired but healthy. Her hair was longer now, tied back with what looked like plant fibers. There was dirt on her face and a new scar on her forehead. Behind her, Taeho could see the inside of some kind of shelter made from bones and animal skin. This is Yuna, reporting from planet KX-47, she began. Her voice was calm, almost bored. Day 35 of the colonization test. Status update. Everything is fine. She paused and scratched her nose. Well, mostly fine. I have established a permanent shelter approximately 500 meters from the original landing site. The cave location proved unstable during the last storm, so I moved to higher ground. My new home is built into the side of a cliff using bones from local predators. Very sturdy, very warm. Do-hyun approves. She turned the camera to show a six-legged creature lying on a bed of moss. The creature looked at the camera, yawned, and went back to sleep. Water supply is stable. I found an underground spring about 2 kilometers north. The water is clean and does not require much filtering. Food supply is also stable. I have identified 17 edible species so far. I am working on farming some of them near my shelter. The purple fungus grows very fast if you give it the right conditions. Taeho nodded. This was all good news. Better than good. It was remarkable. But then Yuna's expression changed. Her professional tone softened into something more personal. Now for the bad news, she said. She looked directly at the camera, directly at Taeho, even though she could not see him. Sir, I have a complaint. Taeho raised an eyebrow. A complaint? She was surviving on a planet that should have killed her 50 times over, and she had a complaint? This planet is trying very hard to kill me, Yuna continued. And that is fine. I expected that. I trained for that. But nobody prepared me for the worst part of this mission. She leaned closer to the camera. Sir, I am bored. There was silence on the command station. Everyone was staring at the screen. I am so bored, Yuna repeated. Every day is the same. Wake up, find food, avoid predators, fix things, go to sleep. Wake up, find food, avoid predators, fix things, go to sleep. It never ends, and there is no one to talk to except Do-hyun. And he is a wonderful listener, but his conversation skills are very limited. She sat back and sighed deeply. I have survived acid storms. I have fought creatures with teeth the size of my hand. I have eaten things that would make a garbage disposal cry. But I did not expect to miss other humans this much. I did not expect the silence to be the hardest part. Yuna was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. I miss voices. I miss laughter. I miss arguing about stupid things. I miss someone telling me I am wrong. I miss music and stories, and bad jokes. I miss all the things that make life more than just survival. She looked at the camera with tired eyes. So here is my official request, Commander. Send someone else. Not because I need help. I can survive alone. I have proven that. But humans are not meant to be alone. We are social animals. We need each other, not for survival, but for living. There is a difference. Taeho felt something tight in his chest. He understood what she meant. Humans had always needed community. Even the strongest, most independent person needed connection. It was part of what made them human. If you send someone, Yuna added, please send someone who plays cards. I am tired of playing against myself. I always know what cards I have. It takes all the fun out of it. She smiled slightly, the first smile of the message. Yuna out. The screen went dark. The command station was silent. Then, slowly, people started talking. Some were laughing about the card request. Others looked thoughtful. Taeho walked back to his desk and sat down. He needed to think about this. The mission parameters said one human only. The test was about individual survival. But Yuna had raised an important point. What was the purpose of survival if there was no life to go with it? He pulled up her file and read through it again. Yuna Kim, 32 years old. Born in a small city on Earth. Parents were teachers. She had studied biology and survival techniques. She had volunteered for dangerous missions before. She had a reputation for being tough, smart, and stubborn. But she also had a note in her file from her psychological evaluation. Subject shows strong need for social connection. May struggle with extended isolation. The evaluators had flagged this as a potential weakness. Maybe they were right. But Taeho saw it differently. He saw it as evidence that Yuna was deeply human. She could survive anything except being alone. He made his decision. "Get me the council on the line," he said to his communication officer. "I want to discuss modifying the mission parameters." The call with the Galactic Council took 3 hours. The aliens were confused by Yuna's complaint. The Valari representative, a creature with too many arms and not enough understanding, spoke first. "She is alive. She has food. She has shelter. What more does she need?" Taeho tried to explain. "She needs companionship. Humans are social beings. We function better in groups. But the test is about individual survival," said the Korthan representative, a being made mostly of crystal and light. "If we send more humans, the test is invalid." "With respect," Taeho said carefully, "the test might be flawed. You want to know if humans can colonize Deathworlds. But colonization is not about one person surviving. It is about building something lasting. You cannot build a colony with one person." The council members whispered among themselves in languages Taeho did not understand. Finally, the head of the council spoke. Byung-ho, the scientist who had been watching Yuna closely, raised his 3 eyes. "The human commander makes a valid point," Byung-ho said. "Our original test was designed to measure survival capability. But survival and colonization are different things. Perhaps we should expand the experiment." More whispered discussion, more alien languages. Then Byung-ho spoke again. "Very well. We will allow additional humans to join the subject on KX-47. But we have conditions. First, only volunteers. Second, they must arrive with minimal supplies. Third, they must be evaluated to ensure they can contribute to the colonization effort." Taeho nodded. "Understood. I will begin recruitment immediately." "One more thing," Byung-ho added. "We want to understand this human need for companionship. It seems like a weakness to us. Your species cannot function alone. Is this not a flaw?" Taeho smiled. "No, council member. It is our greatest strength. Alone, a human can survive. Together, humans can do anything. You will see." Byung-ho looked skeptical but did not argue further. The meeting ended and Taeho returned to his work. He drafted a recruitment notice for volunteers willing to join Yuna on KX-47. He expected maybe 10 or 20 responses. He received over 5,000 in the first hour. Every single one mentioned the same thing in their application. They wanted to play cards with the woman on the Deathworld. Taeho laughed for a long time. Humans were strange. They feared nothing except being alone. They would travel across the galaxy, land on a planet that could kill them in 100 ways. All because someone asked for a card partner. This was why humans would inherit the stars. Not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they would go anywhere, do anything, face any danger, just to be with each other. The aliens would learn this lesson. The galaxy would learn this lesson. And it all started with one bored woman on a Deathworld, complaining about having no one to play cards with. 6 months had passed since Yuna first landed on planet KX-47. In that time, she had transformed from a lone survivor into something much more impressive. She had become a builder. The settlement started small, just her bone shelter on the cliff. But as the weeks passed, it grew. She built a second structure for storing food, then a third for tools, then a fourth that served as a workshop where she could work on projects protected from the weather. Dohyun had grown bigger too. The 6-legged creature was now the size of a small horse. He followed Yuna everywhere, helping her carry materials and warning her of danger. She had even trained him to pull a simple cart she built from bones and plant fibers. The Galactic Council assigned a full team of observers to watch her progress. Scientist Byung-ho led this team from a space station orbiting the planet. Every day, they recorded her activities and sent reports back to the Council headquarters. Day 173, Byung-ho spoke into his recorder. The human has begun construction of what appears to be a water storage system. She is using the shells of large creatures she calls river beasts as containers. The shells are naturally watertight and resistant to acid. She has connected 7 of these shells with channels made from hardened clay. Estimated water storage capacity, approximately 2,000 liters. He paused the recording and looked at his assistant, a young Valari named Suho. She is building infrastructure, Byung-ho said. Do you understand what that means? Suho shook his head. She is preparing for the others who will come? More than that. She is thinking about the future. About years from now. Not just days. No species we have observed on Deathworlds has ever done this. They focus only on immediate survival. But this human is planning ahead. Suho looked at the screens, showing Yuna working in the red dirt below. Perhaps humans are different because they evolved on a planet that was also dangerous. Byung-ho nodded slowly. Yes. I believe you are right. Earth made them this way. They learned long ago that survival is not enough. They must build. They must grow. They must always move forward. Below, Yuna finished connecting the last shell container. She stepped back and looked at her work with satisfaction. Then she pulled out her communication device and began recording. Day 173 update, she said. Water storage system is complete. I now have enough reserve water to survive at least 2 weeks without visiting the spring. This will be useful during the storm season. She wiped sweat from her forehead. Also, I really miss showers. Washing in a cold spring while creatures with too many eyes watch you is not relaxing. When the reinforcements arrive, I am going to build a proper bathhouse, with hot water, and privacy, and maybe some nice soap that does not smell like volcanic rock. She ended the recording and went back to work. The storm season Yuna mentioned arrived on day 180. It was worse than anything she had experienced before. For 3 days straight, the sky turned black, and acid rain fell in sheets so thick she could not see more than a few meters ahead. This time, she was ready. Her shelters held strong. Her water reserves kept her hydrated. She had enough food stored to wait out the worst of it. She and Do-hyun sat inside her main shelter and played games she had invented using small stones. When the storm finally passed, Yuna walked outside to survey the damage. Several of her smaller structures were gone, washed away by the acid floods. Her garden of edible plants was destroyed. 3 months of work, gone in 3 days. Byung-ho watched from orbit, expecting to see despair, expecting to see the human finally break. But instead, Yuna stood in the middle of the destruction and laughed. Is that all you have? She shouted at the sky. Okay, planet. Let us do this again. I have rebuilt before. I will rebuild again. You cannot beat me that easily. She started working immediately. Within 2 weeks, she had reconstructed everything that was lost. Within a month, her settlement was larger than before. The council's records showed that during these 6 months, Yuna had survived 17 events that would have killed members of other species. A volcanic eruption on day 89 that sent rocks flying through the air. A swarm of poisonous insects on day 112 that covered her shelter for 6 hours. A territorial predator on day 134 that was twice her size and 3 times as angry. Each time, she survived. Each time, she complained about something unrelated. The communication relay is too slow, she said in one recording, while there was still blood on her hands from fighting the predator. I sent a message to command 3 days ago, and still no response. Is this how colonists are treated? I am literally keeping humanity's expansion dreams alive with my bare hands, and I cannot even get a decent data connection. Please fix the Wi-Fi situation before you send more people. The council scientists did not understand what Wi-Fi was. They did not understand why she complained about communication speed, instead of nearly dying. They did not understand humans at all, but they were learning. By day 200, Yuna had built something that could reasonably be called a village. There were 12 structures of various sizes. There was a water system, there was a food storage area that could hold supplies for months. There was a defensive wall made from the bones of predators she had killed. She had even started domesticating other animals besides Do-hyun. She found a nest of small flying creatures that made a sweet substance similar to honey. She built them a home near her settlement and they seemed content to stay. She found burrowing animals that could be eaten but also provided soft fur for clothing. She began raising them in a pen. "I feel like a farmer," she said in one recording. "A very strange farmer on a very hostile planet, but still a farmer. My grandmother would be proud. She always said I needed to learn practical skills. I think survival on a Deathworld counts as practical." On day 210, something happened that changed everything again. Yuna was collecting water from her storage shells when the ground started shaking. At first, she thought it was an earthquake, but the shaking did not stop. It got stronger. She climbed to the highest point of her settlement and looked toward the mountains in the east. What she saw made her heart stop. A creature was coming toward her. But this was not like any creature she had seen before. This thing was massive. It was taller than the mountains themselves. It walked on legs as thick as ancient trees. Its body blocked out the suns. Its shadow covered the entire valley. "That is big," Yuna said quietly. "That is very, very big." She grabbed her communication device with shaking hands. Emergency update. Day 210. There is a creature approaching my settlement. Size classification. Extremely large. Larger than anything in the Council's files. I am going to attempt to hide, and hope it does not notice me. If this is my last message, please tell my family I love them. Also tell Commander Tejo he still owes me 20 credits from that poker game. Yuna out. She hid in the deepest part of her bone shelter with Do-hyun pressed against her. The ground shook as the creature walked closer. 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 Then it stopped. Yuna held her breath. The shaking had stopped. Everything was silent. Too silent. Slowly, carefully, she crawled to the entrance of her shelter and looked outside. The creature was standing directly over her settlement. Its massive feet were on either side of her village, so large that her entire life's work fit between its legs. The creature looked down. It had eyes the size of houses. Eyes that were now focused on the tiny structures below. On the tiny human, hiding in the bones. Yuna and the creature stared at each other for what felt like hours. Then, slowly, the creature lifted one massive foot. It was going to step on her. It was going to crush everything she had built. But it did not step down. Instead, it placed its foot carefully to the side of her settlement. It lowered its huge head and sniffed the air around her structures. Then it made a sound like a mountain sighing, turned, and walked away. It walked away. The biggest creature Yuna had ever seen. Probably the biggest creature anyone had ever seen. And it just walked away. Yuna sat in the dirt and started laughing. She laughed until tears ran down her face. She laughed until her stomach hurt. "It did not step on me," she said to Do-hyun. "Why did it not step on me? I am so small. So insignificant. It could have crushed me without even noticing. But it did not. She thought about it for days afterward. And eventually, she came to a conclusion. The planet was not trying to kill her. The planet did not care about her at all. She was just one small thing among billions of small things. The planet was simply being itself. Living. Breathing. Existing. Yuna had survived not by fighting the planet, but by learning to exist alongside it. By becoming part of its ecosystem instead of an invader. She recorded her thoughts and sent them to the Council. This message, more than any other, would change how the galaxy understood humans. "We do not conquer worlds," she said in the recording. "We adapt to them. We find our place. We become part of something larger than ourselves. This is how we survive. This is how we thrive. This is how we will spread across the stars." Byung-ho played this message for the full council. When it ended, there was silence. Finally, one of the elder council members spoke. "Perhaps we have underestimated these humans. Perhaps they are not conquerors at all. They are something else entirely." "What would you call them?" Byung-ho asked. The elder thought for a moment. "Survivors. Adapters. Learners. But more than that." He paused. "Partners. They do not fight against the universe. They learn to live with it." Maybe we should do the same. From that day forward, the Council's view of humanity began to change. And it all started with one woman who survived a giant stepping over her village, and then complained that her Wi-Fi signal was still too weak. Captain Minho stood at the bridge of the transport ship Horizon and watched planet KX-47 grow larger in the view screen. The planet looked exactly as the files described. Orange sky, red land, everything designed by nature to kill anything stupid enough to land there. Behind him, 47 volunteers sat in the cargo hold. 47 humans who had applied out of thousands, all chosen for their skills and their willingness to die on a world that hated life. Engineers, farmers, doctors, builders, and yes, several people who listed card player as one of their primary qualifications. Beginning descent, the pilot announced. Landing coordinates locked. Touchdown in 15 minutes. Minho nodded and walked to the back of the ship. He wanted to speak to his people one more time before they landed. The volunteers looked up as he entered the cargo hold. They were nervous. He could see it in their eyes. They had watched Yuna's recordings. They knew what waited below. But they were here anyway. Listen up, Minho said, his voice cutting through the hum of the engines. In 15 minutes, we touch down on a Class 7 Deathworld. You all know what that means. The air will try to choke you. The rain will try to burn you. The creatures will try to eat you. Everything on this planet wants you dead. He paused and looked at their faces, scared but determined. This was good, but you also know something else. You know that one woman has survived down there for 8 months. Alone. With nothing but her wits and her stubbornness. If she can do it, so can we. We are going to join her. We are going to help her build something that lasts. And we are going to prove to the entire galaxy that humans belong everywhere, even in places that should be impossible. A hand went up in the back. It was a young woman named Jimin who was supposed to be a botanist. Sir, do we know what kind of cards she likes to play? Everyone laughed. Even Minho smiled. I believe she mentioned poker in one of her messages, but I am sure she will teach us whatever games she knows. The landing was rough, just like every landing on this planet. The ship hit the ground hard and everyone grabbed their seats. When the shaking stopped, Minho stood and hit the button to open the cargo door. The first thing that hit them was the smell. Even through their breathing masks, they could smell the sulfur and metal and decay. The second thing was the heat. The air was thick and hot, like breathing soup. The third thing was the woman standing 50 meters away, waving at them with both arms. Yuna looked nothing like her early recordings. She was thinner and more muscular. Her skin was darker from the sun's. Her hair was long and wild, tied back with strips of animal skin. She wore clothing made from creatures that had tried to kill her, and she carried a spear made from the bone of something very large. Beside her stood Do-hyun, now the size of a horse, his 6 legs planted firmly in the red dirt. Around them both were signs of civilization. Buildings, fences, gardens, paths cut through the hostile landscape. About time, Yuna shouted across the distance. I was starting to think you forgot about me. Minho walked down the ramp and approached her. When he got close enough, he stopped and saluted. Captain Minho, reporting for duty. We have brought supplies, personnel, and... He reached into his vest and pulled out a sealed package. 3 decks of playing cards. Yuna's face lit up like both suns combined. She grabbed the package and hugged it to her chest. You are now my favorite person in the entire galaxy, she said. Come on, all of you. I have been preparing for this day. We are having a celebration. She led them through her settlement, pointing out the various structures she had built. The water system, the food stores, the animal pens, the defensive walls. The volunteers looked around in amazement. One woman, alone, had built all of this. At the center of the settlement, there was a large open area with stones arranged in a circle. In the middle of the circle was a fire pit, and over the fire pit was meat cooking on a frame made from bones. Is that, one of the volunteers started, predator steaks, Yuna said proudly. The big one that attacked me last month. Very tough animal. Took me 3 hours to kill it, but the meat is actually quite good if you cook it long enough. Very high in protein. She gestured for everyone to sit on the stones around the fire. Then she started cutting pieces of meat and handing them to her guests. The meat was dark and smelled strange, but the volunteers were too polite and too hungry to refuse. Not bad, Minho said after his first bite. Tastes a little like beef, mixed with something I cannot identify. That is probably the poison, Yuna said casually. Do not worry, cooking removes most of it. You might feel a little dizzy later. But that is normal. The volunteers looked at each other with concern. Yuna laughed. I am joking. Mostly joking. You will be fine. Probably. As they ate, Yuna told them stories about her time on the planet. The storms she had survived. The creatures she had fought. The systems she had built. The volunteers listened with wide eyes, understanding for the first time just how remarkable her survival had been. High above them, the Council Observation Station recorded everything. Scientist Byung-ho watched the gathering with fascination. They are celebrating, he said to his assistant Suho. They just arrived on a world that could kill them at any moment, and they are having a party. They are happy to see each other, Suho observed. The isolation is over. The human is no longer alone. Byung-ho nodded slowly. Yes, this is what she complained about. Not the danger. Not the hardship. Just the loneliness. And now that problem is solved, she is. He searched for the right word. Content. She is content. Down below, Yuna pulled out the decks of cards and started explaining the rules of poker. The volunteers gathered around, some sitting on bones, some on rocks, all of them eager to learn the game they had heard so much about. Minho watched from a slight distance, taking in the scene. These people would face terrible challenges in the days ahead. Some of them would probably die. This planet did not forgive mistakes. But right now, in this moment, they were just humans being humans. Laughing, talking, playing games. He understood now why Yuna had survived so long. It was not because she was the strongest or the smartest. It was because she refused to let the darkness win. She refused to give up on the things that made life worth living. Even on a world that hated life, she had found ways to be human. What are you thinking about, Captain? Yuna asked, appearing beside him. I am thinking that the Council chose the wrong name for this place, Minho said. Deathworld. They call it a Deathworld. But you have turned it into something else. What would you call it? Minho looked at the settlement, at the fire, at the people gathered around playing cards, at Do-hyun lying peacefully in the dirt, at the orange sky and the twin suns beginning to set. Home, he said. I would call it home. Yuna smiled. It was a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes and made her face shine. Home, she repeated. I like that. I have been calling it many things in my head, mostly curse words, but home is better. She sat down next to him on a large flat stone. Can I ask you something, Captain? Of course. Why did you volunteer? You could have had any assignment in the fleet. Why come here? Why risk your life on a mission everyone said was impossible? Minho thought about the question. He could give her the official answer, the one about duty and exploration and humanity's destiny among the stars. But that was not the real reason. I read your messages, he said quietly. Every single one. I read about your struggles and your successes. I read about Do-hyun and your bone shelter and your water system. And I read about your loneliness. And 1 2 4 time. He looked at her. I came because you asked. You said you needed someone to play cards with. That seemed like a good enough reason. Yuna did not say anything for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion she was trying to hide. Thank you, she said. Thank you for coming. Thank you for bringing everyone. Thank you for the cards. Thank you for surviving long enough for us to find you. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set and the 3 moons began to rise. The card game continued behind them, filled with laughter and arguments about rules. The fire crackled, The alien world made its strange sounds all around them. Byung-ho recorded his final observation of the day. The human colony on KX-47 has officially begun. 48 humans now inhabit the planet. Against all expectations, they appear to be thriving. Their leader, a woman named Yuna, has demonstrated that humans are capable of surviving conditions we thought impossible. But more importantly, she has demonstrated something else. Humans do not merely survive. They create. They build. They connect. They transform hostile worlds into homes. He paused, then added, "The question our test sought to answer was, how many humans does it take to colonize a Deathworld? The answer appears to be 1. One human can survive almost anything, but they will complain about being lonely until you send them friends." He smiled, something he rarely did. Perhaps this is the true lesson. Strength is not about facing danger alone. Strength is about building communities, about creating connections, about refusing to give up on the things that make life meaningful. He ended his recording and looked down at the planet below. Down there, humans were playing cards around a fire on a world that should have killed them all. They were laughing. They were living. The galaxy would never be the same. Humans had arrived on the Deathworlds, and they had brought their terrible card games with them. The universe would just have to learn to deal with it.